The survival horror genre explores some deeply dark and taboo themes. The idea of putting the player at such a disadvantage where the only goal is to survive against seemingly overwhelming odds is enticing to a lot of people. Games like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and The Last of Us are stellar examples of what the genre is capable of. But there was one game that's not really as well known as the others I listed. But it's a game that sparked quite a bit of controversy at the time of its release, and may have changed the way violence is portrayed in games forever. The year is 2002, and at Rockstar Studios there is an internal conflict going on over the content of their next game. Former Rockstar employee Jeff Williams stated in an interview that there was a sense of discomfort in the studio, and there was almost a mutiny over the gratuitous violence of Manhunt, Rockstar's newest game. Manhunt is a stealth-based survival horror game where you have to survive and eliminate hunters sent to kill you by a demented voice known as the Director. As you try and escape this snuff film nightmare, stealth and diversion are your best friend as you sneak around every scene and pull off some brutal executions. Weapons like plastic bags, baseball bats, and barbed wire are at your disposal, and there are various ways to execute your enemies. The game's story is pretty standard. It's the common escape with your life narrative that many games in the genre use, but the uniqueness of having you participate in snuff films added a certain realness to the gameplay scenarios like no other game really had before. The previously mentioned Resident Evil and Silent Hill were terrifying, but there was a certain fantasy element to them. Zombies aren't real, and Silent Hill doesn't exist. But snuff films are rooted in a very dark, urban legend about the film industry. If you're unfamiliar, snuff films are a subgenre of film that has actual homicide in it, meaning that the kills you see in the movie are actual murders. Now, like I said, this is more or less an urban legend, and there are no confirmed snuff films that really exist in mainstream cinema. Now, several films have claimed to be snuff films in the past, and the most famous example of this has to be Cannibal Holocaust, but that's a movie for another day. Upon release, Manhunt was met with public scrutiny, as according to US Representative Joe Baca, the game was a mindless, violent game that took things too far. People saw it as an icky murder simulator that was telling kids how to kill someone, using vicious, sadistic, and cruel methods to kill. The game was banned in New Zealand, and possession of the game was considered an offense. Australia and Canada both refused to rate the game on the basis that it was inappropriate for anyone to own. The media quickly jumped onto this pile-on by stating that the game was a venial disconnect. There was no challenge or fun to it. The game was just senseless slaughter that was way too accessible for children. At one point, the game was even blamed when it came to an actual murder case that went down in England. Manhunt was criticized for being a violent, realistic, and ugly game that had no business being made into a video game, and that after its time in the media spotlight was done, it would fade like other games that were seemingly only made to create controversial headlines about it. But here's the thing, this game is really fucking good. Manhunt received universal praise as a revolutionary and daring step in gaming. Its dark tone and tight gameplay leading up to satisfying and brutally satisfactory kills gave the game an edge that no other game had had before. Sure, Grand Theft Auto had some brutal violence in it, but nothing compared to how realistic and gruesome Manhunt was at the time. While the game did have a reputation amongst the mainstream as a senseless violence simulator, there were many out there that screamed this game's praises from the mountaintops. To quote the Chicago Tribune, "Manhunt is easily the most violent game ever made. It will likely be dismissed by many as a disgusting murder simulator with no reason to exist. But Manhunt also is the Clockwork Orange of video games, holding your eyes open so as to not miss a single splatter, asking you, is this really what you enjoy watching? Had Manhunt been poorly made, using the snuff film angle as a cheap gimmick, the game would have been shameful and exploitative. What elevates it to a grotesque, chilling work of art is both presentation and gameplay. Manhunt is solid as a game. It's engaging to use stealth as you creep through the streets of this wicked city, using your smarts to avoid death while dishing out much of your own. It's Ubisoft's Splinter Cell meets the cult faces of death videos. If Manhunt succeeds at retail, it will say more about America's fascination with violence than any political discourse or social debate. That makes Manhunt the most important video game of the last 5 years. While Manhunt isn't exactly remembered as a classic PlayStation game nowadays, it's remembered by a dedicated few because of the impact it had when it came to realistic portrayals of violence and murder, as well as setting the stage for future games to take that plunge and not be afraid of how it's received. Because when things like gratuitous violence are done well, and they have a reason to exist, it can be a revolutionary, groundbreaking piece of media that fundamentally changes the game forever, even if it's not remembered as well today. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch today's videos. If you liked what you saw and you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe. My channel right now seems to be all gaming videos, but that's not something I really want to stick to forever. It's a little bit of a hint towards next week's video, but I also have a Twitter account that you can follow at pixel and I did just create a Discord page for my channel that you can follow. As of right now, it's mostly just to serve as announcements when a new video is released, but I'll go ahead and include both of those in the description below so that you can go ahead and follow them. And lastly, I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.